I thought it would be really, I didn't think we could have an event like this without hearing from some parents who have been through the system, as it were, have engaged with social care to different degrees. So our first speaker, our first parent is Mary Smith, and Mary's going to talk to you for a little bit about her experience.
So my son, I'm here because my son was involved with county lines. It's not something you just get into, and it's not something that you just get out of. It was a 15-month period during which our environment and our lives completely changed constantly during that time. A number of things happened during that time. He fell out of education completely. He'd go missing regularly. When he was home, his behaviour was constantly challenging. On one hand, I'd be so grateful he was there just to have him with me, but on the other, he was hyperactive, rude, aggressive, didn't sleep at night, slept all day, was constantly spinning out, which, when you realise what they're facing through exploitation, is understandable. But like I said, it doesn't just happen. There are some things that kind of led us there, and we'd been living at my parents' home for a few months due to becoming homeless. And during that time, there had been some bouts of domestic violence perpetrated by a family member. And my son was in a constant state of high alert. My mental health wasn't particularly great at that time. And after one particularly bad incident, we went to the council and they found us temporary accommodation in another borough. And it was during that time that my son was first recruited and first went missing. It was the beginning of, it was lockdown. The world had gone into lockdown, and my son went missing for a week. I'd had an inkling he was going to go the week before because a friend of his had gone missing. And through, scrupulously going through his social media and just probing him, just trying to get little bits of information, I realised that what his friend was doing. And I was terrified. I thought, he's going to go. I could just sense it. I could sense in him a change. He was getting quite hyper about things. It was almost like a kind of nervous excitement that I detected in him. So I started love bombing him. I just, anything that would usually make me, respond in a parental way, i.e. make your room tidy, make your room, do this, or get, just certain chores that he would have to do on a daily basis. If he didn't do them, I wasn't giving him a hard time about it at all. I was making all his favourite foods. I was just making sure he knew I was there for him and that I loved him. And when he did go, he messaged me straight away. He left one night. He said, "I'm just going to run a bath," and I was reading my book. And I thought, he's been running that bath a long time. And I went in there and I just knew what had happened. And I called him. He didn't answer, and he texted me and he said, "Don't worry, Mum. I'll be back in a week. I'll be all right. I promise. Don't worry." And I just remember falling to the floor and knowing what was going on and feeling just completely helpless. But of course, I called the police straight away. I texted our social worker. It was 11 o'clock at night. And the police came round and I told them what had happened, and I knew what had happened, and I gave them as much information as I possibly could, things that he'd said to me, what he was wearing, and that was it. He went for a week. On the good thing that happened was that he rang me every single day, or at least messaged and stayed in contact, which I believe is quite not usual. So I was really hanging on to that, and I do think that was a lot to do with the love bombing. I think he had a sense of guilt for going, despite he'd been so angry at me beforehand because of what we'd been going through. So when he came back, I thought, this is it. He's not going to want to go there again. But he did. He was back for a week and then he went again. But this time when he came back, he didn't just come back as he had before. He called me on the Saturday night and he was terrified. I could hear it in his voice, and something bad had happened. And he said, "I need you to come and get me, Mum." And So we worked out a station where I could pick him up from in London, and I drove and I picked him up, and he had machete. He'd had his clothes had been sliced where he'd been threatened with a machete, and he'd had any money that he'd had on him that he was holding for these drug dealers had been robbed, which is a typical thing that happens. So it turns out is that a way of keeping kids enrolled in the or keeping them in the environment that they're in, keeping them recruited, is that they will rob them of the money that they have, and then they tell them, well, you're going to have to stay with us now. You're not going anywhere. You owe us a debt, and you're going to have to pay it. So when that had happened, he'd gone with a friend this second time, and the friend freaked out and did a runner. My son didn't want to do that because he was scared of what would happen to him if he did that. So he wanted to stay, but after 2 days of staying there on his own, he knew that he didn't want to be there, and he left. But he had a debt with them, and they knew where we lived. So once he was back, he was frantic, and he was pacing around, and he was scared, and I was getting scared, and there were people hanging around outside our house, older teenagers, and I didn't know if we were being paranoid or what was going on. But once those kids left, I packed a bag and we went and stayed at a friend's that night. And the next morning we had a call from the police to tell us that there had been intel that my son was in danger, and could we not stay at the house? So we went and I booked an Airbnb for a week. This is all during lockdown, so we could only do that with the support of our social worker, because only key workers were allowed to be staying in Airbnbs and things at that time. But we went and we stayed for a week, and I tried to calm my child down. During that week, the social services that I was working with, throughout, I've been talking to missing persons teams daily. I've been talking to social services. I've been talking to the police. We had a police liaison officer who was amazing. And as a team, they managed to get us some more temporary accommodation. And that's how we arrived in Hillingdon. So on arrival in Hillingdon, we had I didn't know anybody there, not a soul. I don't even know if I'd heard of Hillingdon before. Probably I had, but it didn't really register on my radar. Over that period of 5 months, he stayed in, and I thought that was it. He'd had enough to shock him. We had such amazing support. We had such an amazing welcome to Hillingdon. We had a social worker who put together a team which involved a worker from an arm of, there's a charity called St Giles, and they have an arm called Roots and Return, and they allocated my son a worker from there. The school nurse, brilliant parents. There was just, I worked with a psychologist as well for a while to help me understand what my son was experiencing. And all of this came through the social worker. Really, I might have forgotten somebody, but it just felt like we were having a huge warm hug put around us, to be honest with you, in terms of the support we were feeling. I hadn't been able to talk to my family about it. I had a couple of friends who were amazing. And if I've learned anything, having a social support team is vital, as is having a professional support team when your child's going through anything like that. So he started at the school, and I thought things were going to be okay. But ultimately, we got to the summer holidays, and actually, when he'd gone into the school prior, sorry if I'm getting this a bit confused, but he went to the school before the summer holidays. They weren't open properly because of lockdown, but he'd been able to go in there and just see a few key workers and a few people, and just to kind of, they wanted to help him feel settled within the school. So this team knew exactly what he'd gone through, and the safeguarding team there were fantastic in terms of making sure the right people knew, but not everybody knew, because it's a sensitive subject, so it's not something you want everybody knowing, hence why I'm anonymous today in terms of I'm not showing my face. But when after the summer holidays, the thought of coming into school and facing all those students, having not been in education for a while, was too much for him. He got another offer and he went back into working with a different gang from a local area in Hayes. During that time, he would go missing only for 1 or 2 days. He was better than he was the last time, as in he obviously went in with a lot more strength in saying he wasn't such a young lad anymore, and he had some experience in the whole thing. He would go missing for a day or two, and I have to say I was beside myself. But I'd get a call from the school, and I'd get a call from the school nurse, and I'd get a call everybody was calling in to make sure I was all right. And I think having all of that support just allowed me to keep going, and all I did was focus on my child and focus on my own well-being in order to sort of, keep being as strong as I could for him, so that when he returned, I wasn't a mess on the floor. The place was clean and tidy. There was food in the fridge, and he was coming back to a loving home. I couldn't have done that without the support that I had. I really couldn't have. And there were times where I didn't want to answer the phone to somebody, or I didn't want to. There were many times where I couldn't do anything other than go for a walk, or just have some cook a chicken or something, and then just sit on the sofa and just wait for him to come back. But I kept answering the phone. I kept talking to everybody, and we got through it. And actually, he's been. We did get through it, and it's not something that I've lost him to. And he is looking at school at courses and things, and he's started to integrate into the local community in a positive way. And he is doing a lot better. It was quite hard fitting all of that into a short amount of time, and I don't know if anyone can nod at me if I run out of time.
You've done amazingly. You have, Mary. Thank you so much. I mean, I don't even know where to begin, really. I can feel and I'm sure we can all feel your pain. And all I can say is that you are incredibly strong to have come through the other end. And the fact that you sought help and you got the help that you needed is testimony to just how strong you are as a mother. So I salute you, Mary, because it's not easy looking after yourself and trying to protect your child at the same time. And as you said, sometimes the judgment and the stigma that is out there is almost too much to bear. So thank you so much for speaking tonight. And as you say, such a short period of time. Our final speaker is Halima Yusuf. Halima, also another parent, is going to talk for 10 minutes or so about her experience with Hillingdon Council. Halima?
Yeah, hello, good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Halima.
Yeah, my name is Halima Yusuf. I am one of parent champion in Brilliant Parent. And I am a mom of 4 young children who has severe, horrible abuse and harassment in the past few years. Sorry. I actually, last year in August, I struggled to deal with my son, who is 14 years. His behavior, about his eating problem and sleeping difficulties. I tried to help him. I speak to the GB, the school. I don't know, they didn't help me that much. After that, I just decided to call the social service for help. Although I am not that confident to call them because of misinformation I had before. But I make that decision that day and I called them, and they sent me a lady who came to us and make an assessment with me and my child. And after that, I got a key worker who's working with me. I got Brilliant Parent courses. It was really helpful for me, what I got. At the same time, my child, he was suffering from severe anxiety, but I didn't know. I don't have any idea about anxiety and all that stuff. Even me, I become emotional, and I don't know, I become just, I could not help him for anyway. And we got a psychiatrist, and even the GB come back and talk to us, and he tried to help him, the school, and now he's fine and he get better. All the help we got, especially the idea I got from the brilliant parent, the courses I got it from me, it was really helpful for me. And key worker, it was wonderful lady who's working with me and helped me for a lot of things. I'm glad he's out now, and he got discharged from the therapist and psychiatrist, and we are doing really okay. But it was really helpful, the help we got from social service, and I didn't wait all that help. I don't know, it's just opposite the things I had before. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Halima. Thank you very much. That's wonderful. So there you have two parents with two totally different experiences, but either way, they've both used the resources from Hillingdon Council and from ourselves, and they've come out the other end. So it really is about being proactive in terms of your children. You know, we are their primary teachers, as it were. And as a parent, we have to be investigators, we have to be counselors, we have to be all manner of things, which we didn't actually know we were signing up to. So, but I think the most important thing is that we can, they say knowledge is power. We have to actively go out there and seek knowledge and find the resources. And we know that budgets are being cut left, right, and centre, but there are still resources out there. And I've been working with Hillingdon Council for the last 10 years in different positions. And I can honestly say that as a borough, in terms of supporting parents, they've got to be amongst the best.